People pleasing is often mistaken for politeness, kindness, or even emotional intelligence, but let's call it what it really is, a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. Most people who fall into the trap of constantly pleasing others didn't wake up one day and decide to abandon their own needs. It started much earlier, usually in childhood, when they learned that staying quiet, agreeable, and low maintenance kept them safe, emotionally, socially, sometimes even physically. They figured out, consciously or not, that if they could just make everyone else happy, they wouldn't face rejection, criticism, or conflict. That wiring runs deep. And now, even as adults, they're still operating on that outdated script, one that's no longer serving them, and in many cases, quietly destroying them. This behavior shows up in subtle but exhausting ways. You say yes when you mean no. You downplay your achievements so you don't make others uncomfortable. You laugh at jokes that offend you just to keep the peace. You check everyone's mood before deciding how you feel. Your decisions aren't really yours. They're shaped by what everyone else expects. And then you wonder why you feel anxious, resentful, drained. It's because your life has become a performance. You're not showing up as yourself. You're showing up as the version of you that gets the most applause, the least pushback, but that applause is empty when it comes at the cost of your authenticity. Let's be brutally honest, people pleasing is about fear. It's not rooted in confidence. It's not a strength, no matter how selfless or nice it looks on the outside. It's about avoiding discomfort, avoiding disapproval. It's a tactic to control how others see you, to make sure you're not abandoned, judged, or left out. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. The more you twist yourself into who others want you to be, the more you lose the core of who you really are. You become a shifter, constantly editing yourself to fit in. And slowly, your identity erodes. What's worse is that this pattern doesn't even get you what you want. You think people will like you more. You think it will make life smoother, but it doesn't. People don't actually respect the person who always says yes, who never pushes back, who never sets a limit. They may appreciate the convenience of having you around, but they don't value you for your strength. They value you for your compliance. And the second you stop pleasing them, the admiration disappears. That's not real connection. That's conditional acceptance based on performance. The danger here isn't just emotional burnout. It's losing the ability to advocate for yourself. It's becoming so used to betraying your own needs that you forget what they even are. You stop asking yourself, what do I want? And instead ask, what do they want from me? And that's a dangerous place to live. Because once you start abandoning yourself to make others comfortable, you start shrinking. You become invisible in your own life. You silence your voice, soften your edges, and minimize your power, all in the name of being nice. But nice doesn't build resilience. Nice doesn't set boundaries. Nice doesn't change your life. And when survival mode becomes your baseline, thriving becomes impossible. People pleasing may have served a purpose once. It might have protected you when you had no other choice. But if you're still using that strategy today, in a world where your voice matters and your choices define you, then it's no longer protection. It's self-sabotage. And the longer you cling to it, the harder it becomes to find your way back to who you really are. Nice doesn't equal kind, and confusing the two is one of the biggest mistakes people make, not just with others, but with themselves. Being nice is about how you appear. It's performative. It's polite, agreeable, and often fake. Kindness, on the other hand, is rooted in strength and integrity. It's honest, direct, and sometimes uncomfortable. But our society has glamorized niceness to the point where we associate it with being a good person, even when that niceness is masking resentment, avoidance, or fear. Nice is smiling when you're uncomfortable. Nice is saying yes because you're too afraid to say no. Nice is avoiding the truth to protect someone's feelings, even if it means compromising your own values. Nice doesn't ruffle feathers. Nice stays small. Nice fits in. But here's the problem. Nice often betrays you. You say what people want to hear instead of what they need to hear. You let bad behavior slide because confronting it would be mean. You tolerate disrespect, stretch your boundaries, and suppress your opinions, all in the name of being nice. Kindness looks different. Kindness is honest even when it's hard. Kindness is setting boundaries because you respect yourself and others. Kindness is telling someone the truth, not to hurt them, but to help them grow. It's saying no with love and standing firm with compassion. Kindness requires courage. It takes emotional maturity to be kind. Because real kindness sometimes sounds like, I can't do that for you, or I don't agree, or that behavior isn't okay. That's not being difficult, that's being real. People who rely on niceness often assume it keeps the peace. But that peace is shallow and temporary. It's not real peace, it's the absence of open conflict, not the presence of mutual respect. And the price you pay for that fake harmony is usually your own well-being. You smile to avoid tension, but inside you're exhausted. You agree to things that drain you. You ignore your instincts, bury your voice, and give so much that there's nothing left. Also, people will say, she's so nice. But that compliment doesn't mean what you think it means. Often, it means you're easy to manipulate, easy to control, easy to overlook. Kindness, on the other hand, is grounded in authenticity. It's not about being liked, it's about being trustworthy. People may not always like what you say, but they'll respect you for being honest. And deep down, they'll feel safe with you because kindness is consistent. It's not reactive or fake. It's not driven by a need for approval. It's driven by values, by clarity, by a strong sense of self. You don't change who you are to make someone else comfortable. You show up as you are and treat others with dignity, even when you're firm. Especially when you're firm. Nice people often struggle with guilt. They confuse conflict with cruelty. They think saying no makes them selfish, but kindness knows better. Kindness understands that self-respect and empathy can exist at the same time. You can care about someone deeply and still refuse to enable their behavior. You can love people and still draw the line. That's not being cold, it's being clear. And clarity is a form of love that niceness can never offer. The truth is, nice is about image, kind is about character. Nice people often suppress their truth to avoid being judged. Kind people speak their truth and trust that the right people will understand. Nice seeks comfort, kindness seeks growth, and in a world obsessed with appearance, choosing kindness over niceness is an act of courage. Because kindness won't always get you applause, but it will earn you respect, starting with your own. Boundaries are power. They're not walls to keep people out. They're lines that define where you end and someone else begins. They protect your time, your energy, your values, and your peace, and yet, so many people are terrified to set them. They think boundaries make them selfish, cold, or difficult, but the truth is, people who lack boundaries aren't being generous. They are being afraid. Afraid of losing approval, afraid of being disliked, afraid of confrontation. So instead of saying no, they say yes with a smile and a knot in their stomach. They allow others to drain them, disrespect them, even control them. And over time, they lose themselves trying to be everything for everyone. The power of boundaries isn't in the rejection of others. It's in the affirmation of yourself. When you set a boundary, you're saying, I matter too. You're declaring that your needs, your values, your time are just as important as anyone else's. It's not about being harsh, it's about being honest. People think being easygoing makes them more likable, more lovable. But what it really does is blur your identity. If you're always adjusting to other people's wants, where do you even exist in your own life? Boundaries clarify relationships. They separate the ones who genuinely care from the ones who just take. Because when you start setting limits, the people who only liked your compliance will show their true colors. They'll call you selfish, difficult, even mean, but that's only because your boundaries stop serving their convenience. It's not your job to make others comfortable at your own expense. It's your job to protect your well-being, to stand up for your time, to honor your space. That's not rude, that's responsible. There's a myth that strong boundaries push people away. In reality, they do the opposite. They create healthier connections, because when people know where you stand, they know how to respect you. There's no guessing, no walking on eggshells, no silent resentment building up beneath the surface. Boundaries breed trust. They tell others you're self-aware, that you know what's okay and what's not, and they invite mutual respect, not manipulation, not guilt, tripping, not passive aggression. Most people who struggle with boundaries aren't weak. They're usually the strongest ones in the room, but they've been conditioned to believe their worth is tied to how much they can give, fix, tolerate, or endure. So they overextend. They say yes out of guilt, take on more than they should, and smile while they're burning out. But strength isn't measured by how much you can carry. It's measured by your ability to choose what's yours to carry in the first place. Boundaries are how you make that choice. It's not about creating distance. It's about creating clarity. You can say no with love. You can assert yourself with grace. You can be firm and kind at the same time. It's not either slash or, and anyone who tells you otherwise is benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Setting limits is not rejection. It's not punishment. It's an act of self-respect. It's how you teach others how to treat you, and if they don't like it, let them go. Anyone who values you will value your boundaries. When you don't set boundaries, you don't just exhaust yourself. You teach others that your time, energy, and presence are limitless and free. That's not sustainable, that's not healthy, and it's definitely not empowering. But when you do set them, clearly, consistently, without apology, you reclaim something vital. You reclaim your voice, you reclaim your time, you reclaim your space, and most of all, you reclaim your power. Authenticity over approval is not just a motto. It's a mindset shift that changes everything about how you move through the world. So many people live their lives chasing approval, fitting in, saying what they're supposed to say, dressing how they're expected to dress, and doing what will get the most likes, praise, and validation. It's a quiet performance, one that becomes so natural they forget it's even happening. But deep down they know they're not living as themselves. They're playing roles, wearing masks. And the more approval they get, the emptier it feels, because it's not truly meant for them. It's meant for the version of them they've manufactured to be accepted. The desire to be liked isn't wrong. It's human, but when that desire becomes the compass for your decisions, your personality, and your relationships, you begin to disappear. You say what's safe instead of what's true. You hold back your opinions to avoid conflict. You laugh at things that don't feel right. You nod in agreement while your gut screams no. And you become a watered-down version of yourself, palatable, pleasant, forgettable. Because approval has a price, and the currency is your authenticity. Authenticity isn't loud. It's not about broadcasting your life or oversharing to prove you're real. It's about alignment. It's about knowing who you are, what you believe, what you value, and acting in accordance with that, whether people approve or not. It means you're okay with being misunderstood, misjudged, even disliked, because being true to yourself matters more than being accepted by people who don't really know you. That kind of self-trust can't be faked. And once you start living from that place, approval starts to lose its grip on you. The need for approval is sneaky. It doesn't just show up in people pleasing. It shows up in over-explaining, apologizing for your choices, second, guessing yourself because someone raised an eyebrow. It shows up when you shrink your voice so others can feel big, when you tone yourself down so you don't make others uncomfortable. But that's not humility, that's self-abandonment. And the more you do it, the more you teach yourself that who you are isn't enough unless it's polished, filtered, and curated for public consumption. Authenticity is what happens when you stop editing yourself to earn love. It's showing up as you are, flaws, opinions, boundaries, edges, and trusting that the right people will stay, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that keeps them comfortable at the expense of your truth. You don't need to prove your worth to be worthy. You just need to stop trading your identity for acceptance that never lasts. When you prioritize authenticity, you also begin to attract different people. The ones who liked you for your compliance will fall away. Let them. That's not a loss. That's clarity. What you gain is space for deeper, more honest connections, for conversations that matter, for relationships where you're not performing, but simply being. That level of freedom only comes when you stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Is this true to me?" Living for approval is exhausting because it's endless. No matter how many people clap for you, It's never enough if you're clapping with a mask on. But authenticity, that's peace, that's power, that's presence. It won't make you universally liked, but it will make you respected by the people who matter, and more importantly, by yourself. Because when your life reflects who you truly are, not who others want you to be, you stop existing for applause and start living for purpose. Respect is earned through clarity, not compliance. Yet too many people believe that if they just say yes enough, agree often enough, and avoid rocking the boat, they'll be respected for being easy to work with, easy to get along with, easy to control. But that's not how respect works. Compliance might get you approval in the short term, but it will never earn you lasting respect, because people don't respect the ones who always say yes. They respect the ones who know when to say no. They don't admire the ones who blend in. They admire the ones who stand firm. Clarity is knowing who you are, what you value, and where your lines are. It's being unshakable in your principles, consistent in your actions, and honest in your words. People respect that because they can trust it. When someone is clear, you don't have to guess where they stand. There's no hidden agenda. There's no confusion. You know who they are, and that kind of clarity builds both trust and influence. It doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean being harsh. It means being grounded in your truth and not bending it to make others comfortable. Compliance, on the other hand, is a temporary fix. It makes things smoother for a moment, but over time it creates resentment, both from you and toward you. From you, because you keep giving in, suppressing your voice, and living according to someone else's standards. Toward you, because people start to sense that you don't stand for anything, that you can be pushed, shaped, and overridden. And eventually, they stop seeing you as someone with authority or depth. They see you as someone who plays along, someone who avoids discomfort, someone who won't challenge the status quo. There's a lie that says if you're agreeable, people will like you more. Maybe that's true, but being liked is not the same as being respected. Liked is surface level, respected is deeper. Liked can disappear the moment you say something unpopular. Respect sticks around because it's based on consistency and truth doesn't always please people. In fact, sometimes it challenges them, stretches them, even offends them, but it's honest, and when you're honest, even your critics know where you stand. People think that to gain respect, they have to give more, tolerate more, be more agreeable, more accommodating. But respect doesn't grow in compliance. It grows in clarity, in the ability to say, this is what I expect, this is what I accept, this is where I draw the line. That doesn't make you difficult, it makes you dependable. People can trust your word. They can trust your standards, and in a world full of ambiguity, that kind of clarity is powerful. The most respected people aren't the ones who said yes to everything. They're the ones who set a standard and upheld it. They made decisions based on values, not popularity. They communicated clearly, even when it was uncomfortable. They weren't afraid to draw the line, say no, or walk away. They weren't easy, but they were real. And real commands more respect than agreeable ever will. When you trade clarity for compliance, you give up your influence. You lose your voice trying to keep the peace. But when you live with clarity, you don't need to demand respect. It comes naturally. People may not always like what you say, but they'll know you mean it. They may not always agree with you, but they'll trust that you're consistent. And that trust is the foundation of respect that compliance could never build.